Hello everybody, I'm Dakian. Welcome to my update video for Monday, the 4th of April 2016. And now, I set myself the goal last week of painting 13 minis. I did not quite make that. I did, however, paint 11 of them and got some work done on the remaining 2. So you're looking at the ones I finished, and let's start with the centerpiece here, the Snow Troll, who is mostly a sort of bluish gray with some blood and gore in his maw and on his claws. It turned out a bit darker than I intended, but oh well, good enough. And the werewolves, I especially like the bigger ones. I think this one, who is not just fur but has some skin texture on him as well. He's the one that turned out the most interesting. As you can see, he also has some blood on him. They all have, actually. I wanted to get across the point that the werewolves are savage beasts who will rip your heart out if given the chance. This is the other relatively big one. Here's the runt, who's not terribly interesting, actually. Looks more like a hyena than a werewolf. And the lady werewolf, who also has gotten her hands bloodied. I'm not sure where the focus is, but oh well. What else? Well, I did these 3 dwarven skeletons from where are they from? Oh yes, they're from Fenrir Miniatures. Perhaps a bit dark, but yeah, they're okay. This one has really knobby knees. That's because the legs were rather weak, very thin resin, and they broke off and had to be glued on with a lot of glue. So now he looks malformed, but oh well, he's undead. He doesn't care. Where's the I think this is the final one with the spear. I'm gonna have to I think I'm gonna have to stop using brown for clothing items on skeletons. It becomes rather indistinct. I mean, the belts and such are supposed to be brown leather. It's kind of hard to differentiate it from the sort of brownish bone color of, well, you know, the bones. And the Warhounds from Reaper, this is the big one. Well, the bigger one of them. They're all on 30mm basis. These were slightly smaller. Not terribly complex paint jobs. But you know, dogs are often mainly one color. I didn't make snow bases for these because, well, not everything can be Frostgrave, you know. And you know, even if it is in Frostgrave, maybe it's not always snowing. Yeah, so those are the finished minis. Let's go on to look at works in progress. Now, when you're watching this particular clip, it's a kind of a flashback to the middle of the week and how far I'd gotten with this model then. Immediately after this, I'm gonna segue into how far I've gotten today, i.e. Monday. This time thing is confusing. Anyway, here you can see that I've added on the arms, which include the rest of the outer cloak, and then you can see how much of this inner robe was covered up, so I kind of wonder why did I spend so much time on it, but oh well. Anyway, I've also done his face here in a kind of, and his hand in a kind of sickly greenish pallor. He's kind of a necromancer, I think. because he's got so many skulls. Paint the skull here. The decorations here are going to be the non-metallic gold, same as here. So are these decorations on the outer cloak, but they haven't had anything done on them yet. This is just a base coat on this. What else? Oh yes, the reason I wanted to show this off was to sort of show off how well I hit the joins. You can kind of barely see them. There's a line going here and another one going here, which is where the parts were glued together. And it's most obvious down here because there's a little bit of a step here because the fit was not perfect. There's no, this one sticks out below, but there's no room up here to push it up any further because it meets the cowl. It would have looked really weird. Anyway, I've base coated the outer cloak in this nice deep purple shade. This is 3 coats to get this solid a coat, and I'm going to start highlighting it up. And once that is done, I'm probably going to go into the non-metallic gold again, and probably I will do the hilt of the sword. You can see I've done the hand here and I've base coated the hilt. I'll probably finish the hilt up before attaching to the model. However, the blade of the sword is going to be non-metallic steel, and that will be probably the very last thing I do. And that's after attaching it to the model. And I'm not sure here on the scythe. Again, the blade is going to be steel. We have a lot of other stuff. We have a skull here. We have vines and roses. I am not sure if any of this will be painted before attaching. It attaches like this. Question is, can I? Yeah. I will probably attach it first, but I will attach this before the sword, paint everything except the blade of the scythe, then attach the sword and paint both blades at the same time. That's probably going to be the way I do it. Anyway, let's skip ahead in time. And after the passage of some time, we have painted the cloak very subtly. As you can perhaps tell, the highlights are very slight because this is a dark color and I don't want to go too bright on the highlights. It's going to look garish and cartoonish. And you can see I've painted the NMM decorations on the hat and on the edges of the cloak, and they're highlighted here. They're highlighted because this little fold is going to create shadow, so looking at it from above, it's the top and bottom parts that would catch light, and here it's more the upper corner, and here because the hat sort of is sort of concave, goes inward like that, it would be the top edges and also the sort of top points at the bottom here that would catch the light the most. And I went ahead and painted the hilt of the sword. And I kind of had to quickly redo it after doing it the first time because I had highlighted it like the light was coming from here. And then I realized, no, when I stick it on the model, he's going to be holding it at an angle. So it's like the light is coming from here, and I had to repaint the highlights quickly. I'm not sure if they're correct now, but oh well. And learning from my mistakes, I decided to leave the gems. There's a gem on each side of the hilt here. I'm going to leave those for now. I'm going to paint those after the sword hand is attached, not before. Anyway, the main body is all done now. It's the weapons, the sword and the side that I have left to paint. So, join me again this time next week and we'll see how far I got along with this. And here we're looking at some stuff in the midst of prep. Now, these two models I have primed off their bases because they will be attached later. If we start with the Malifaux, the Hooded Rider, this was quite complex to put together. And his base is already completed. I've shown you before. I'm going to put him on a swamp base. And because it's so complex, hopefully nobody will notice that I screwed up the assembly. Where did I screw up, you ask? Well, the head. If you look at the picture here, you can see that the tentacles are coming off in a frill on the top of this head. But when I went to attach the tentacles, which was the last thing I did, I wondered, but all the holes are on the underside. What happened? Oh, I glued the head on upside down. Because it was very similar. It was just two small eye holes that made the difference. And I glued it on very strongly using Gorilla Glue, and you know, it was not coming off. So I glued the tentacles on as best I could, and I bent them upwards. And I actually used plastic putty to fill in the eye sockets so nobody would see my boo-boo. And so I'm saying, well, this creature doesn't have eyes in its head. It's using the eyes in these snake heads to see. That's my excuse. Anyway, I'm sticking to it. Anyway, the ice troll I primed in white because it's going to be so pale that I thought that was appropriate. I really like this miniature, this model. It is very well sculpted and it is very well posed. It has an active, dynamic pose, but it's still open so that you can reach all the areas and paint them easily. And there's just enough detail, not too much, but you know, just enough. I like that. I really, really like that in a model. And this is going to be his base. I'm showing to you before priming. Well, it has some glue that needs to dry for a little while before I prime it. This is how you make a scenic base. Well, how I can make a scenic base with mixed methods. See, the base of the base is made from a Happy Seppuku basing stamp. It's the flagstones. They're supposed to represent, like, maybe flagstones in Frostgrave, like a ruined city, for example. And there's some rubble. So there's a big piece of cork here and some smaller, this is large and medium-sized gravel from Gale Force 9. And finally we have some remnants, a sword and a skull with a helmet on it. These are leftover bits from my set of Mantic skeletons. So I'm going to prime this a dark gray and paint it in generally dark colors to contrast the light colors I'm going to use for this guy. Also, here's some more examples of guys who have been based in a combination of methods. These are the two dwarven miniatures that came with that that Kickstarter, the Advanced Song of Blades and Heroes Kickstarter I showed you, I think, last week. And I thought, what the heck, let's paint them up. Otherwise, they're just going to languish unpainted forever. Might as well get it done. So I used the same basing stamp, actually, for these. And the method I used here was to first put the gray stuff, this is Procreate, on, press into the stamp, and then I pressed the tab of the minis actually into the putty and let that harden, and used that as, I didn't use any glue, I just let it harden around the tab to keep them in place. And then I trimmed off the excess here in the bottom, because of course when I pressed it down, some putty squirted out here. But I let it set before I cut it off, because my experience is that if you do it right away while it's soft, you tend to lift too much off. And then I filled in the top with plastic putty from Vallejo, and added some of the gravel, the basing grit, again from Gale Force 9, to be some loose rocks or whatever. You might notice that there's been some repair made here. The haft of this axe was weak and it came loose, and I had to glue it in place and add some strengthening to it. But I think it's going to turn out fine in the end. Not quite so far along on these Guildhounds. I have cut them off their sprues, cleaned them up, and glued them together. I still need to figure out some way to base them, especially this guy. Maybe, yeah. I'm thinking of adding some stuff like something from this kit, perhaps, to some of their bases, to give them something to react against, or perhaps some gravestones. I'm not sure. I had a bit of a scare in this because you can tell from the instructions here that the lower jaws on two of them are separate pieces that had to be glued on. They were really, really tiny. And one of them, this one I believe, actually flew away when I clipped it off the sprue, and there were some tense minutes of searching my floor for it. It's a very, very small piece of dark plastic. My floor wasn't all that clean, and finding it was, yeah, I wasn't sure I would find it, but I did find it eventually. So, yeah. I have not yet made a final decision on how to base these. I'm going to have to think some more about it and consider some options. But they'll be further along next week. Now for next week, for new prepping of new models, I thought I would finish up the rest of my Wargames Foundry natural animals, the rest of that order that I got around Christmas. And so we have two gorillas here that I'll just paint up as normal silverbacks. We have two pumas that I'll paint up that way as, you know, mountain lions, cougars. Two leopards that I will paint as leopards. I'll paint normal leopard colors, not the snow leopards, for this. And finally, two crocodiles. Yeah, and you know what crocodiles are like. That is the plan. I think because I'm getting back to work this week, it's probably best not try to bite off too much. I'm gonna just focus on these models and see where we end up. And yeah, that'll be all, I think. Okay, so new stuff that arrived this week was an order I placed just before Easter from North Star Miniatures, because cobblestone castings had been sort of taken under the wing of North Star, and so they were offering a good deal. I believe it was 20% off, and also a bonus mini. So I ordered a bunch of their pulp style adventurers, and for example, this pack here is called the American Adventurers. As you can see, there's a guy with a whip. Wonder who he's supposed to be. Another guy with a pistol, and some guy with a rifle, and so forth. We have the Jolly Good Chaps, who are in various poses with various gear. We have the German Mercenaries, looking suitably Teutonic. We have this pack, which is not marked, but I believe these are known as the European Advisors. There's a Russian, and I don't know what they're supposed to be. A little bit of everything. And we have the Archaeologist pack, or armed archaeologists for some reason. Most of them have weapons. One has a big honking rifle, and several of the others have pistols. One has a fez. Oh, nice. And we have also even more unmarked pack of female archaeologists, of which some are armed as well. And finally, we got the bonus mini, who is from a different era. This guy is the Road Warrior. So, of course, all these guys are intended for my sort of Call of Cthulhu era gaming, 1920s, 30s style. Let's see, I don't know exactly when I will get around to painting any more of these, because I've got other stuff in the pipeline, as you know. But, more stuff to do. That'll be it for this week. Well, this Monday, at least. I will see you next Monday. Until then, have a good week. Keep painting, and I will see you then.